Today, doing something slightly unconventional. It's just a simple little box. Little basin goes on top. There are two little doors in a wet bathroom environment, and I'm using this stuff. It's called Compact 88. It's a waterproof MDF coated in melamine, and it's interesting stuff. I actually left it out in the rain. Usually when you buy pressed board, the last thing you do is leave it in the rain. As you can see, it's been raining last night, and these are some offcuts. And yeah, basically you can leave it in the water. See if we can get a drop on there. It's basically sort of almost like Bakelite. So it's a super wood that's been compressed and glued into itself using a waterproof glue. So when water hits it, it doesn't dissolve the glue and it starts fraying, because the stuff probably starts about this thick before you compress it, before it gets compressed and it presses. So when it gets wet, it uncompresses and it gets about that thick eventually. But this stuff is hardy. Without the melamine coating on, it's almost like a black slate when it gets wet. It's quite nice actually. It would look quite nice machined and varnished. But I've put it in here. This is a little outside shower sort of area, and it's moist and damp, and this piece of wood, or this piece of Compact 88, has been here for a few months now, constantly getting wet, constantly in a humid environment. And if it was MDF or chipboard, or standard melamine, or any of those other sort of materials, it would have been completely filleted by now. But it's great stuff. I'm just using this as a test, because I'm using this stuff more with my builds, and this case in point now. I'm busy within the workshop. Small little unit, but it will withstand years and years and years longer in a moist environment. Where the little cabinet that I'm replacing it, the cabinet that I'm replacing was plain MDF, and it is fraying and exploding and bulging out of itself. So great product, Compact 88, 1,500 Rand of sheet for the 16mm, and it can be used exteriorly as well, so you can build things outdoors without even coating the stuff, and it will work. This is unconventional is because I'm not going to use screws to attach this thing to itself. I don't want to drill through the sides of it, and I don't want to double up on the sides and that sort of thing. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a combination of biscuit joints just to line it up and give it a bit of strength, and then I'm going to scour the surface where this joins on like that. There's a line there, that's middle of the thing. I'm going to use the biscuit joiner and run a very shallow groove all the way along, just to get through the melamine. So that'll have something for the epoxy to grip onto, because I want to epoxy this thing together. I don't want to bother with screws and drilling and whatever. But it's got to be strong because it's a floating unit, and it's going to have a basin on top of it. So it does have to have a fair amount of strength to it. And that is why epoxy won't really grip to this melamine very well. It's a bit slippery, not much purchase for the epoxy to grip on, even though the stuff's amazing. It does have its limits. So basically I'm going to put a couple of biscuits in here, but then run the groove all the way through, just through the melamine, just through this coating. So that'll give more of a purchase for the for the epoxy to grip onto. It's basically, this side is fine, this is nice and porous, the epoxy will grip to that pretty well, but the melamine, where that butts down onto the melamine, not so good. So we've got to try to roughen up that surface for the adhesion to be complete and trustworthy, and have a longevity aspect which is respectable enough to sleep peacefully at night with knowing. Anyway, get on with it. Well, after setting up the biscuit joiner to get things lined up, this thing is now just assembled literally just with the biscuits, no glue, nothing, and it's actually quite a sturdy structure already. So obviously with the glue and with the epoxy, with the biscuits and the epoxy, with the biscuits glued with the epoxy in the strips, as I'll show you here. So what I've done is obviously cut the groove for the biscuits, but then I've cut a very shallow groove. Don't know if it's really showing up, but this is literally just through the melamine, and that's where the epoxy is going to grip against the edge of this. Yeah, so it'll be strong enough. So now everything lines up. I've just got to knock it all together with glue and clamp it, and it should be ready for cleaning up and installation. Because it's fast acting epoxy, rapid set epoxy, it's quite tricky with clamping, but basically I'm just going to apply the epoxy to this layer and drop the side on. It's got the slots cut into it, and then clamp it, and it should be done in a few hours. See, layered over everything. Put a bit more in here. Biscuits are just going to get epoxied in. Yeah, I'm going to need 2 hands for this. And there's the little carcass now made up, without any screws. No screws whatsoever. So these little doors, got to get the hinges mounted. I'll get the hinge holes drilled. But essentially, that's it. Epoxied together. So this should last. This can handle being, I mean, the tops here didn't need to be edged. These could have just been bare compact 88, because basically the basin sits on top of this and gets siliconed on. But I don't know, I just prefer to put the edging on. But anyway, that's, yeah, with the basin on here, this thing can be in a moist, wet, splashy, humid environment for, I don't know, the lifespan of this stuff, probably a couple of 100 years. I don't know if it will already deteriorate much. It just doesn't break. This is the unit that we're replacing. So you can see the old MDF is frayed. Interesting to remove. it's got taps here. Right. New cabinets in. Soft close. Still got to adjust these gaps. But anyway, it's mounted. Now to put the basin on